Good afternoon, everybody. It's KSCO Santa Cruz AM 1080, FM 1041, 1079 San Jose, 95.7 Salinas, Watsonville, KSCO.com. We're also on ZBSradio.com, Z as in zebra, ZBSradio.com. You can check out all our archives there 24/7, every show. We'll take a quick look at your traffic. Highway 17 looks pretty good there northbound. One accident right before Glenwood, reported last hour from CHP. However, you'll get around that easily. Southbound is more the problem there. Looks like heavy from 85 connector to the Lex. 5 miles an hour. Otherwise, 17 looks good. Highway 1 north to Santa Cruz below the limit, backed up from Freedom Boulevard to 41st. Otherwise, Highway 1 looks good through Monterey County entirely. 68, 183, all clear. 156. Currently heavy approaching Castroville. You may want to consider Blackie Road if you need to save some time. 101, your major parking lot out there right now, northbound to Gilroy. Backed up for about 8 miles. You're crawling if you're headed northbound to Gilroy. Back to limit past town, Morgan Hill area, all clear. 152 heavy at Interlochen. And Highway 1 southbound in Seaside. You'll be below the limit there until you get to the 218. Mid to upper 70s today along the central coast. Tomorrow about the same. Overnight patchy fog and drizzle with a low near 56. It's 2:06 and we are streaming live on YouTube at KSCO Global. You can Google that up. KSCO Global. That is our YouTube channel. Find the channel. Find the live stream. Up next, it's Planet Watch with your host, Joe Jordan and Rachel Goodman. KSCO Santa Cruz.
Welcome to Planet Watch, folks. Sunday, June 25th, 2017. This is Joe Jordan without our lovely, talented co-host Rachel Goodman. She's having fun being sort of the DJ and radio maestra up in the far north of California, doing a little pop-up radio station just for the Kate Wolf Music Festival, annual wonderful event. And Kate Wolf was a wonderful musician, singer, songwriter who tragically died young. Every year they have just a fantastic festival up there in Wavy Gravy Land near Laytonville, California. She'll be back next week, though. But we have our interns today, Caroline, Tommy, and Cade, and we have two guests, Ron Swenson and Claude Smith from South Africa, visiting. He has to go back to South Africa, which is another wonderful place, in a few days. And we'll be talking about advanced transportation systems of the future, and maybe even a little bit right now in the present, but mostly in the future. But we'll get to all that after news and commentary. And we have a few little news stories for you. I'm going to start off with mine, which is that the world's largest coal company has announced it's going to close 37 mines because they're no longer economically viable. Coal India, which produces around 82% of India's coal, said the mines would be decommissioned by March of 2018. Hey, that's just a few months from now. The closures of about 10% of the state-run firm's sites will reportedly save about 8 billion rupees. For us Americans here, that's about $125 million. India's solar sector has received heavy international investment, and the plummeting price of solar electricity has increased pressure on fossil fuel companies in the country. The government's announced it will not build any more coal plants after 2022 and predicts renewable will generate almost 60% of its power by 2027, a pledge far outstripping its commitment in the Paris Climate Change Agreement, which, as far as I know, they have not yet pulled out of. They don't intend to. Plans for nearly 14 gigawatts of coal-fired power stations. And just so you know what a gigawatt is, I mean, it's a billion watts, but okay, what's that? Well, that's about the capacity of a large coal or nuclear plant, 1,000 megawatts. About the same as the total amount in the UK, were scrapped in May, signaling a seismic shift in India's energy market. Analyst Tim Buckley said the move away from the dirtiest fossil fuel and towards solar in that country would have profound implications on global energy markets. Measures taken by the Indian government to improve energy efficiency, coupled with ambitious renewable energy targets and the plummeting cost of solar, have had an impact on existing as well as proposed coal-fired power plants, rendering an increasing number as financially unviable. Forget about environmental extremism or however these people are labeled. They're just doing hard money. India's solar tariffs have literally been free-falling in recent months. A report in February by Delhi-based research group, the Energy and Resources Institute, TERI, found that if the cost of renewable energy continued to fall at the same rate, India could phase out coal burning completely by 2050 and the mining of coal long before that. Okay, so that's pretty good news on the road to recovery. So let's see who was going to go next now. We kind of had this all figured out. Okay, Caroline. Caroline's working the controls. She's sitting in Rachel's hot seat today, so thank you, Caroline.
Yes, not going to be able to do as well as her, but we're just doing our best here. My story is also about some solar technology advancements. This one is from Australia. Researchers from RMIT University in Melbourne have developed an ingenious yet simple technology, paint that generates clean energy. The paint contains a newly developed compound called synthetic molybdenum sulfide, which pulls moisture out of the air, similarly to the way silica gel packets used in food packaging are supposed to keep things fresh and dry. These researchers have mixed the compound with titanium oxide, something that's commonly used in wall paint, so they could create a solar paint. This compound acts as a semiconductor and splits water molecules into separate parts hydrogen and oxygen when exposed to sunlight. Hydrogen fuel is one of the cleanest forms of energy, but has never been able to be harvested so cleanly and efficiently before. Traditionally, hydrogen comes from fossil fuels, but unfortunately creates a lot of carbon byproduct. Because of this advancement, it will be possible to harvest hydrogen fuel from water vapor and sunlight on any surface, even in areas far from water with hot and dry climates.
Interesting little question about that. We can look into it later. Maybe some of our listeners can send us whatever they can come up with. Titanium oxide is, a commonly used brilliant white paint, often used on, say, road stripes, But hey, look, that means it's really reflective. So first question that comes to mind is, well, how do you harvest solar energy when you're reflecting a whole lot of it away in the first place? So stay tuned on that one. Okay, I think we're going to Cade next, right?
I think we're on a technology spree because mine is about that as well. After surpassing Japan in 2008, the European Union in 2013, new reports state that China is on pace to outspend the U.S. in science and technology by 2019. This would be a dramatic increase given that in 2000, China only spent around 12% of what the United States did in the science and technology sector. According to the University of Michigan, China is also set to dethrone the U.S. in terms of most scientific discoveries per year. However, China's sudden interest in scientific advancement is not the sole cause for this drastic surge to the top. The United States' lack of effort these past decades has been a symptom as well. From the years 1960 to 2007, the U.S. has had its share in federal scientific funding drop from around 70% to just below 50%, with no signs of the budget receiving a boost anytime soon under the current administration. Given the United States' recent decision to exit the Paris Climate Agreement, China is working with individual states such as California on how to develop low-carbon technology. With every other major country's spending for science and technology appearing to stagnate, China may be a surprising hero for the planet.
Okay, interesting. And we're going to finish off the news part of the hour with our original intern, Cabrillo College intern, Tommy Martin.
Yeah, finally, we've got a story from over the pond. London Mayor Sadiq Khan is considering major changes to reduce his city's growing traffic congestion and make the capital's roads more hospitable to alternative forms of transportation. One proposal under consideration is a pay-per-mile charge, which would replace the €11.50 congestion charge currently paid by London motorists and charge polluting vehicles more. This policy is a part of the mayor's new strategy aimed at reducing the number of car journeys by 3 million a day and increasing the trips made by foot, bike, or public transportation. currently only accounting for about 64%, and he wants it to be up to 80% by 2041. Other policies, a part of this new strategy, could prevent new building developments from creating additional parking, charge for workspaces, and require all new road vehicles to be zero emission by 2040.
So, Tommy, what was it you said that he wants to have 80% by 2041? What is that?
That is the foot, bike, and public transportation as opposed to cars.
Well, hey, this is quite a segue. Of course, a Segway is another transportation device, but this is a segue into our topic for today. Advanced transportation systems of the future, and in fact, ones that are completely solar powered. Now, we're not talking jets here. Maybe someday we'll get there. We'll have a future show on air travel, which is the toughest nut to crack in terms of the excessive carbon emissions that are screwing up our environment. There may be ways out of that. It's going to be a hard one. And, maybe a lot of that is just, hey, not flying as much. But for ground transportation, that's the subject of today. And I'll just cut right to the chase here, and then I will introduce our speakers. This is a public transit system, or mass transit system, for moving lots of people around on the ground in urban and areas and surrounding regions. And by the way, just so I remind myself, Tommy had a question on the way over here. We carpooled, by the way, in an all-electric and largely solar-powered car. That's the best we can do right now. But we had the question, what about Elon Musk's plans for mass transit? I think he's got some kind of an idea for a tube underground for going thousands of miles really fast or something. Kind of curious. So remind me. We'll talk about that at the end of the show, okay, if you guys have any knowledge or opinions on that. But the thing I'm getting at here is PRT, Personal Rapid Transit. This is something that's been discussed by a fairly small group in the Santa Cruz area for quite a while, one of whom is our first guest here, Ron Swenson, a longtime engineer. He has worked and taught at San Jose State University over the hill for a long time. He's long been an advocate of solar energy and the use of solar in transportation. In fact, Ron will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he has participated in races of solar cars, like in Mexico, Australia, all over the world.
Across the United States?
Yeah, across the good old USA. And so we've had this little group that's been trying to get traction, so to speak, on this idea of personal rapid transit, where you have a fixed guideway system, but it is largely in the sky, separated from the grade where all the cars and all the congestion are and all the danger of collisions, very significant, the safety factor. And it's like a packet switched network for the double E people out there, electrical engineers. These things are automatically controlled to go, and there are all kinds of branches and things, and you serve congested areas like the university, Cabrillo College, the Highway 1 corridor for our region. We have a long, narrow county. We have this major freeway and a rail corridor parallel to it that go down the length of our county. And there are very thorny, complicated issues involved with both. I'm thinking that the stars are aligning now to finesse a whole lot of the problems we have with our transportation systems, but more relevantly to most of our listeners out there, other urban areas all over the country and the world could be served well by a system where you have pod cars. Another way of referring to it is small pod cars that can take, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3 people, and they come on demand. You have minimal wait time. You can actually set your watch by these things like you do in Europe with the buses and trains over there. And we'd have better bus and train service here if you could set your watches by our buses and trains. And so I'm leaving out a lot, but anyway, I'm just kind of easing you into what we're talking about here, and we're going to try to convince you in the next 20, 25 minutes that I'm not nuts. The rest of the world is nuts the way we're doing it now, all sitting in little boxes. Some people criticize this PRT as well. You should have buses and trains. They carry way more people. Yeah, but then you require that has some major infrastructure implications. Your stations have to be in just so. And we have excellent, BART and in the DC area, Metro, they're good mass transit systems. But getting to and from those, and so on. All these issues. These guys are going to be, they're the real experts. They're going to tell us about it. But let me just introduce the other guy who we have here, very special. And why don't you just pick up that camera and move it so people can see you there? We got these really cool little, face it towards yourself. That is Claude Smith. He's a big old guy from South Africa. South Africa. You're going to love his accent. I love it. I can't understand a word he says, but anyway, it's we're going to talk. He is a transportation engineer par excellence. And by the way, one of his main inventions and things that he's doing is using super strength steel that uses hardly any steel at all. It's mostly air. And it's not spongy. It's kind of got an ingenious, diagonal strut structure inside of it. He's going to show a big piece of it for you in a while once we get on a roll here. But speaking of on a roll, yeah. Oh, by the way, and did I say this whole system can be solar powered, PRT. It moves people around, massive numbers of people, significant numbers. That's the issue for me, is does it compare to the cars and buses and trains we have now? The demand for getting people from here to there in our area, can this thing meet that demand? The answer is, it turns out, a resounding yes. And yeah, it's going to cost something. But hey, what we're doing now is costing a lot. And if you ruin the planet, that costs more than anything. So anyway, okay, so let's see. Maybe Ron has been the chief spokesman in this area here for a long time about this. Ron, why don't you go ahead and take off from what I said, and we got to try to be concise, which I already haven't given you a good example of. But we have to, in the limited time we have, we sort of have to get to the high points. And then maybe we'll be scanning for your input, folks, dear listeners. Email us, okay, at radioplanetwatch@gmail.com. radioplanetwatch@gmail.com. Tommy's eagle-eyeing that computer. He's going to looking for your questions and suggestions and complaints and insults and whatever else you send our way. And okay, so Ron, take it away.
All right. Well, first I want to talk to the folks here who are from San Jose State, because you know that the mascot of San Jose State is the Spartan. And what we have developed there for the last 5 years, primarily with engineering students, but also from urban planning and industrial design and other departments, is called the Spartan Superway. And what Spartan turns out it stands for is solar powered, automated, rapid transit ascendant networks. And that's what we're doing.
Ascendant, like up in the sky.
Yeah, up in the sky. You can also say aerial. That also starts.
That's cool. That's the first I ever heard. I heard it here first.
There
cool.
you go.
I like it.
Yeah.
I taught at San Jose State, so I guess I could say go Spartans, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I taught at San Jose State back in the 60s for 3 years. And after many years and common communication with folks there, back about 5 years ago, I got back into the same building I was working in all those years ago. It was really fun to get to know Professor Buff Furman. Burford is his real name, but he goes by Buff. And he and I and a group of students, it's been over 200 students now, have a shop in San Jose, right downtown, only a block from City Hall, where you can come and see us sometime. Anytime, we'll be happy to host you there, because this summer we have about 20 interns who are both undergraduate, graduate students, even one high school student, who are working on various aspects of this project to develop both the electronics, the structure, the mechanical elements, all of those parts that go into making a transportation system that's, what did I say, solar powered. We have a solar group. We have an automation group working on what we call mechatronics. We have another group that's working on the rapid part of it, and so forth.
Yeah, well, so now Claude is kind of working on the materials science aspect of it, I guess, the stuff that this system would be constructed out of. And we do have to get back to addressing more, what is this system exactly? What does the overall thing look like? But it's elevated guideway, and unlike some past incarnations of this where the cars run along, well, everybody knows Disneyland, okay? The monorail. Monorails are fun. They're beautiful. They're great. There, the cars sit on top of the monorail. And the cars would be hanging from the bottom very safely, very solid. And that frees up all the area on the top of the monorail for, guess what?
Solar
solar
panels.
arrays, solar arrays which provide power to the thing.
Right
But anyway,
on.
Claude is working on how you put the stuff that you build this stuff out of, both the concrete and the steel. And I just learned from him yesterday talking about this that there's new kinds of concrete that are extremely strong and much less impactful on the environment. You use much less concrete, and yet it's just like the steel. It's more with less. So Claude, welcome, and tell us what you can, and maybe even show us that thing you got there, that piece of a beam.
Hi Joe, thanks guys. So I'm from South Africa, so excuse my accent.
Oh, love it.
as
Just
Joe
keep
said.
talking.
So we do a rapid transport system in South Africa. We've got at this stage we have 3 tracks already running, and in the evolving time that we did the engineering on this, we got to a special structural member, and we call it the crossbeam. So the company that's manufacturing that's a crossbeam fabricators, and I'll pick it up and show you guys this. So if I can just
He's aiming it right at the camera there. You can see down the middle
that's
of
the
it.
cross section of it, and that would be the cross beam. So we use Swedish steel for this.
Hey, I'm a Swede, so that makes me feel
Oh
good.
yeah, Swenson. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, that's good.
Hey.
So
And I went there last year and saw how they make this stuff. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, the Swedes are doing a lot of work on this too, by the way.
Yeah, so we take the Swedish steel and we work on a concept of working on a 2D surface, making a 3D world. So what we do is we design the pillars, we cut them from sheet metal. Most of the parts that we do is sheet metal, and then we fold it, and then we assemble it, and then we get to the 3D part that we're actually using. And we did some tests by the universities in South Africa, and it actually came to about 3 to 5 times stronger than normal structural members that you will get. So it's quite a new technology for us, but definitely something you can look out in the future. And we use this throughout our system, the structural beams and the track beams as well, and that makes the system. So we've got a kilometer track. You guys would know the imperial of that, and we do about 23 kilometers per hour average. At a height of 11 meters, and that's outdoors. So we're moving more the mining stuff at this stage. We got into the mining industry first, and on that we're busy with people transportation in South Africa as well. And we came out over to America to help run in the 3D design development of the test track that we want to put down in San Jose. And probably we would try to start this year, or even earliest as the start of next year. But we're finalizing the design as we speak, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. So you all scored a piece of land over near the Spartan Stadium at San Jose State, where you have about a 1 kilometer track, right? Well, yeah.
No, it's a little smaller.
Oh,
We
yeah,
have
because
a couple
it's
hundred
feet now.
meters.
Right.
600 feet, 2 football
Right.
fields.
So you're going to be able to run some things on that to test the basics of the system. And then, I'm kind of thinking that if this system is as good as I'm thinking it potentially could be, we need to really scale up to actual build out and deployment as soon as possible. What is your time horizon, Ron? I know you're going to be maybe seen by some like me I also am going to be seen along with you as a booster or an enthusiast or a hyper promoter or whatever. But when do you think we could actually be building systems that are out there really running and really carrying lots of people? And how much, let's say for Santa Cruz, how much? Let's just get right to the bottom line. What would one of these things cost?
Well, we're looking at, once we got up the learning curve, something on the order of 10 million a mile. And you can think about this in terms also of capacity. When I say a mile of this track, we're not talking about the equivalent of 1 lane of traffic. We're talking about the equivalent of several lanes of traffic that can be accomplished with 1 lane of this transit system. And part of the reason this really works is that the stations are all offline. if you think about going from San Jose to San Francisco on the train, you're going to make 20 stops. There's a total of 27 stations on that line going clear down to Gilroy. And so you're going to accelerate, consuming a lot of energy. And as soon as you get up to speed, you're going to stop for the next batch of people in Santa Clara. Some people are going to get on, some people are going to get off. That's what we call a corridor. But our design is a network. So it's going to have high capacity, and that's because and high speed, because when we come to the Santa Clara station on our way to San Francisco, we breeze right on by because the station is offline. And in order to make that work, we have a special switch. And one of the key things we did at San Jose State is develop that switch. So back to what it's going to take to do this, we are a small group of people. There are perhaps 3 or 4 companies out of all the groups working in this field who are putting the car under the track. And if you go out and look up PRT online or something like this, you'll find that there's a system that's been in place for 40 years in Morgantown, West Virginia. There's a system at Heathrow Airport. There's a system in Abu Dhabi in the Masdar City, Future City, and there's one over in South Korea. All of these have been built in the last 5-10 years. And so those systems, because the cars are on top of the track, it means that the capacity is less, and at the same time, what we're doing is a little more complex. So we are in the process of negotiating several contracts, working in partnership with the people in South Africa and another group. You've heard of JPODs. They have a system that they're negotiating with cities in India, people in China, so forth. And then we will see, I think, this begin to blossom. The real question, Joe, you asked about Santa Cruz. The real question is whether Silicon Valley, here we are considered the innovation capital of the world, whether we are going to rise to the occasion and become those who export rather than import. Remember back in the 80s, we were trounced by the Japanese starting to build compact cars because the demand came about. And it's the same thing here.
Mm-hmm. Question that just came to my mind as you talked. You said, well, because those other systems have the cars on top of the monorail, they have less capacity. I mean, I know that having them on the bottom enables you to do the solar. That's big.
Right.
But why does that increase the capacity to have the cars on the bottom of the rails? I don't know how that relates to capacity, whether the car's on the top or the bottom.
Well, I don't say that it wouldn't necessarily be so, but the ones that they've been building so far are typically battery powered, and they are wheels on pavement. And as long as you have wheels on pavement, you don't have the responsiveness that you have with our designs, both what we've done at San Jose State and what Claude and his people have done in South Africa, where if you have to stop quickly, you clamp on to the wheel. I mean, clamp the wheels onto the track. You could get a very quick response. So the key is to have very easy response.
I think we have to go to a commercial break, right? Okay, hold that thought there, and when we come back, I'm going to show you a picture of this. I'm going to try to line this up with the camera, just so we can see what we're talking about more. Okay, thanks.
Healthcare that fits your Santa Cruz lifestyle. That's why Dignity Health Dominican Hospital and Dignity Health Medical Group Dominican work with you to make personal choices regarding your health. It's the type of care we can offer because we're more than just a hospital and medical group. We're part of this community. Visit DominicanHospital.org to find a doctor and start living healthy today. Healthcare that fits your Santa Cruz lifestyle. Dignity Health. Hello, human kindness.
I'm Matt Thompson, Santa Cruz resident and project manager for Day One Solar. I find Santa Cruz to be such a unique place. You have community-minded residents that really appreciate the beauty that surrounds us. But with that comes a responsibility to protect our natural resources for generations to come. At Day One Solar, we offer clean energy systems that will save you money while you help save our planet. Solar energy now. Day One Solar.
Planet Watch Radio is brought to you in part by Day One Solar. The time for solar is now, and your friends and neighbors at locally owned Day One Solar are dedicated to making the right solar energy system work for your home or business. Call or email today for a free no-obligation estimate, 8316-878097, day1solar.com with the number 1, a proud member of Think Local First. KSCO, back to Planet Watch.
And for those of you who are watching on our, I'm not sure if we ever do Facebook Live anymore. We might have had some copyright issues, but YouTube. Actually, Jason, if you could go back to that, I was just going to point out that beautiful beach picture that's just what's raging just outside our studio. The waves and the beautiful weather are raging. We'll be getting back out into that ourselves in another 25 minutes or so, but that's right next to KSCO Santa Cruz. Okay, now Jason, back into the studio, if you would, and Jason is our wonderful engineer, and we're going to try to show you a picture here. Just if our South African guest, Claude, can hold that up. You get a little bit of reflections, but hey, there's an image so you can actually get your head or your eyes around a little bit what we're talking about. That's kind of near downtown Santa Cruz, near the existing transit center. Artist's conception of part of a system that would involve branches going here, going there, optimized to feed the greatest demand. And look, as I said in what I sent out this morning to people on email announcing this show, there's no road rage here, okay? That you don't have to be driving. It's basically self-driving vehicles, only I'm a little nervous about self-driving vehicles that are all just have, 6 degrees of freedom out on the road. If they are constrained by a fixed guideway network, that I can get a little more comfortable with that. And again, for a fraction of the cost of anything else that is being discussed and considered out there, I will lay down this challenge. I have already done this, and I have not been hearing back from the major transportation thinkers in our community. Show me something that is cheaper and less impactful on the environment, including especially the big one, carbon emissions, than this system. Now, of course, we're not showing you this system yet, but we're showing you this system in the future, which if we all kind of come together on this, it could happen. Now, here's a big objection that I know some people are going to have. I've already heard this from various friends. Oh, man, and I just now coined this term, sky blight. It's sky blight. Now, look, I am more of a lover of the sky and actually know a lot more about the sky than just about anybody out there that I know. And I love the sky, and I don't want sky blight. But, hey, to my mind, that's a lot prettier than choked freeways just full of stupid cars. And anyway, let's do another picture or two here. How about, here's kind of a cool one. I don't know what this vehicle is supposed to be, this black thing.
Oh, that's the station.
Oh, that's a station.
Yeah.
The black thing. Okay. Claude is driving here. Yeah.
And it's got solar on it. We have solar on the front of the station.
These are just a few little hints of what this thing could look like. And, as they say, the rest is details. Well, hey, it turns out the details are very intriguing. So, look, I'm going to make an announcement here. It's relevant mostly to Santa Cruz, but if you want to know a lot more about this, there are 2 meetings coming up in the next 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, right here in Santa Cruz, to discuss this, get the word out, start planning, start strategizing. Well, continue. There's already been some planning and strategizing, but there's some new folks who are getting really interested in this. And so get in touch with us at, again, that email address you should always use to reach this radio show during and between the shows, radioplanetwatch@gmail.com. Send us a message if you want to get I'm not going to bore all of our listeners in Norway with the details of where and when this meeting is tomorrow and the next day, but they are happening, and that might help get this more underway. So, let's hear some more from Claude. Claude, how about concrete? You can go ahead and stop holding that thing there, but good job. That was great. So you told me yesterday about the concrete aspects of this. I mean, the piers, for instance, and the beams are going to be made of this steel, but there's going to also be concrete in at least the piers, the vertical things
Yes.
that hold up the elevated system, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Okay, so we did some tests on the beams, and we actually filled them with 1,000,
2000.
2,000 psi concrete,
That's pounds per square inch. Concrete,
and
yeah. He goes by
yeah,
megapascals,
so that
being
for
a
us
South
that
African.
would be 7 megapascals or 15 megapascals or whatever. And the engineer that did the test for us at the University of Wits, he actually said that we could fill this with anything, because he actually, with the test, it came out to whatever you put in it, just as long as you can plug it so it don't come out, you would have the same strength and beam. So we started off with the 7 MPa concrete, and then with the same test we ramped it up to about 35 megapascals, and we got the same results of 200 or 150 to 200 tons that beam could take. And so that's actually a very strong member. So that's for the rocks and the mining industry. So you don't need that strength of concrete, and we're only using 3 millimeters of steel, flat steel. That
Three
3 millimeters.
millimeter thick.
Yeah.
That stuff he showed you that was mostly air. It's steel that's 3 millimeters
Yeah.
thick.
That's
It's like-
1/8 of an inch for those.
It's like
of
a
you
couple
who-
of pennies, I think.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then for the people transportation, because we don't need that type of strength, we're moving 15 tons at 40 kilometers per hour. The people transportation will probably be in the area of 2 tons at the same speed, or even faster, depending on where we go and where we want to go. So we would probably look at lightweight concrete, and that's what we said yesterday. So that's a new technology that they're currently busy with, and there's been a lot of tests and stuff done on that in South Africa already, that they actually fill, one of the filler material in the concrete would be polystyrene balls, and that's air. So we've done some tests on that. We get to 15 MPa concrete on that, and that's sufficient enough, and you're probably about 5 or 6 times lighter with the same strength of beam. So that would be a good thing for us to use, and we're busy with tests on that, and probably would do some in the future as well.
This would be concrete that floats, for those of you.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Something else we talked about yesterday, we actually started looking it up. I had become aware of it some years ago. There's a potential revolution in the normally very hidebound concrete industry. The cement is a key element of concrete. I mean, you also have sand and water, but the cement, which is a major greenhouse gas emitter, both in just the chemistry of making it and the energy it takes to make it. Geopolymeric cement is an innovation that just our alert listeners out there can go find that on the web. Geopolymeric cement. It promises to be quite a bit greener, so to speak. But I want to get back to the issue of cost here. It's hard in just basically a radio audio environment to really introduce this without a lot more pictures. And someday when we get a website for this show, we'll be able to, simultaneously display animations and all. And there's some really good animations I want to. In fact, before I forget, I'll tell you, go look this up right now on the web. Bubbles and beams. Just bubbles and beams. And what I get is like 6 or 8 choices. Choose the one that says A Convenient Truth in the title, and it's 4.5 minutes long. And hey, for the music, if nothing else, you'll love it. It's great. It's a really cool animation, I think made by Swedish people, right? And it's in and for Sweden. But it's just a tantalizing teaser for you about the potential. And so Bubbles and Beams, A Convenient Truth. But I want to get to the cost issue. The one number we've heard so far was $10 million a mile. Well, hey, $1 million is a lot. It'll take you a month to count to 1 million. And well, $10 million a mile. But what does this compare to? Anything else that's being considered? Bus, train, highways. What you guys can put this in context for us, right?
Well, I want to say that if you look at a bus, maybe a bus costs $100,000, $200,000. So in that case, what we really have to look at is how much it costs per passenger mile in the end.
That's your
ultimate test. Now, I'll come back to that in a second and say that, first of all, if you look at BART in San Jose, the new system that has not yet been built from Berryessa down to Dearden Station is going to cost estimated $5 billion in round numbers, and that's close to $1 billion a mile. And that's because a big chunk of it is going to be underground along Santa Clara Street.
$1 billion a mile. That's 100 times 10 million.
There you go. So now remember that this is a corridor system that can only have a few stops. A BART train is made of 10 cars that are 80 feet long. You have to find a place that's 800 feet long for a station. Our stations can be basically like a postage stamp, as you saw there in a couple of these pictures. It takes up very small footprint, can even be done going into buildings, for example, and not even have a separate station. Go into the mezzanine level of an office building, a hotel, so forth. So when you look at the operating costs of other forms of transportation, it can range from $2 down to maybe at best case 50 cents a mile. That's what the U.S. government will allow you to charge on your taxes for the cost of your travel, 50 some odd cents a mile. We're going to be down in the range of 3 cents a mile, passenger mile.
Yeah, that is a key point here, is the lightness of the footprint, because it is super strength, super lightweight material. It's kind of like, in the Tolkien trilogy, I remember they had these special armored suits made out of a magical material called mithril. You remember mithril? It was the mail that the knights wore or whatever, and it was super strong and super light. Well, that's what we have here, or we have the potential. And so that means you don't have to do a whole lot of hogging of land, with your stations, and your footprint is very small. So, for instance, we could go right down the median strip of that Highway 1 corridor, finesse that whole mess. It's going to take some time, it's going to take some money, but geez, it's better than beats what we got now. So anyway, So
Well, come back to the point we discussed earlier about the job we're doing on climate change, and we've been talking a lot about climate change, and everybody's on board with the concept. But remember that, especially in California, almost half of our emissions are from what they call mobile sources. That's from automobiles, trucks, and buses. And what we can do now and deliver better trip time going across town with our system than you can in a Ferrari, because a Ferrari has to stop at all the lights. We don't have to stop going across town.
I like the use of the hot Ferrari. It's way slower than a PRT system.
That's right.
Yeah. So, hey, do we have any thing coming out there in cyberspace for us? I suppose if we did, I would have seen about it from hand signals.
Well, we actually got a comment on our YouTube live feed from a guy named Ray. He has a question for Claude. He said, if I'm hearing this right, the beams and posts can be filled with anything. How about hempcrete? And
hey, that's a good one.
That's just concrete made from a hemp derivative or something?
I used that in helping build a house once, actually.
That's cool.
So, well, we could probably use it. We'd have to look into testing some more. But the theory is, and Andries, the founder of the company, he actually explains it the way that if you take a straw and you fill it with sugar, and you pinch the ends and you try to bend it, it actually resists bending. If you empty it and you try bending it, then it doesn't resist. It actually just bends. So in theory, we could fill the cross beam with anything. And if I say anything, it shouldn't be a material that compresses too much. But in theory, if you fill it with anything, you cap the ends, and you try to bend it, then it will be the same as the theory of a straw with sugar closing the ends that resists the bend.
Mm-hmm. Hey, in the limited time we have left, usually we end these interviews by about now, so we have the last little section for what I call oddball stuff, which you folks are welcome to join in on. It's fun and interesting. But we were going to talk about Elon Musk and whatever. Remind me what his idea is, anybody, and what do you think of that? Say,
Well, it's
Ron?
called the Hyperloop.
Hyperloop,
Yeah.
And what is it?
And it's the concept of an evacuated tube. There's another company that's called what's called ET3. Same general
What does that
concept.
stand for?
I forget. But
Electronic transport or something.
yeah, and
Environmental transport.
the both of these are with the concept that you're going to go several hundred miles an hour. Now, remember there's such a thing as the laws of physics, and these laws apply to humans. So if I were to go around the street corner here in downtown Santa Cruz at 300, 500 miles an hour, I think you could imagine what would happen. I'd kind of fall apart. So that's a great idea if you want to go to LA, or preferably go to Portland. I avoid LA. Sorry. But
Or even
if
Portland, Maine.
yeah, there you go. But if you want to go around town, 40, 50 miles an hour around a corner would be staggering. I've done a couple of tests going around a corner, and 20 miles an hour is quite the limit for me in a car. And I watch to make sure that I've got the green light and I'm going onto a double street if I possibly can. So here we're looking at a system that is navigable in town and could go out to the suburbs, but we certainly don't want to be going 700 miles an hour around town. So we're blending a combination. Now, I think that what Elon Musk and others are talking about may have a better application than the so-called high-speed rail, which is only going to be a couple hundred miles an hour. And I think we could go beyond what the current genre of high-speed rail is doing, but that is quite a different application.
So what would be his propulsion? Some kind of magnetohydrodynamics or something?
Solar power. I mean, in terms of the energy, they've also been talking about doing this with solar. The idea is using maglev or a combination of fans that are in not actually full vacuum, but a small amount of air that you're moving through the vehicle with a turbine. So there's several ways to do this.
Well, thanks. I'm glad that you, I figured you would know something about that. I mean, as I was telling these guys yesterday, we talked about this for 3 hours over at his place, just getting ready for this show. And I kind of want, how kids, sometimes you catch them drawing pictures, fantasy pictures of crazy inventions, to do this or that or the other. I want all of us in that mode. This society, we are in a really, as George Clooney kept saying in that movie, "Oh brother, where art thou? Where art thou?" He says, "We're in a tight spot. We're in a tight spot." He said that about 6 or 7 times. We're in a tight spot. Well, we are, and we need to all be, inventing, thinking, being virtuous our way out of this thing. And, and including sacrificing. I got to put a word in for sacrificing. We got to make changes in our lifestyle, and that's yet another topic, which occasionally we do mention, and maybe we need to mention more. But this was just an initial foray into a world of possibilities here, which I think is interesting and promising and hopeful. And so I challenge anybody out there to come up with a better way, okay? And let's duke it out in a friendly, respectful, interesting way. Okay, now it's time. I think, unless either of you has any burning final comments, and you can throw them in. We still got 7 or 8 minutes here, but let's. I think this is finally time. I have a riddle each week usually, and I've been kicking this one riddle down this can down the road several weeks because it's a riddle about a rail on the ground. You remember that one? And we're talking rail sort of here. Now's the time to answer it, and you guys aren't going to have much chance to think about it. I'll give you a minute. Here's the riddle for you. You have a perfectly straight rail lying on perfectly flat ground. Forget about the curvature of the earth or anything. Just flat, straight, horizontal ground. Somebody sneaks in, and it's pinned down at both ends. It's 1 mile long. 1 mile long exactly. It's pinned down at both ends. Somebody sneaks in the middle of the night, solders in an extra foot For you, that's a little less than a third of a meter. An extra foot of rail. So now you have, it can't fit between those two pins at the end, right? It has to bow up. It could crinkle in an ugly way, but we're going to make it bow up in a perfect arc of a circle. And that's an arc of a circle that's a mile and a foot long, a mile plus a foot long. And the chord of the circle there that connects the two ends of that arc is a mile long. The question is, in the middle, where the bowing up is maximal, how high does it get above the ground because of that extra 1 foot? Does everybody have that picture? Caroline, remember the time I first reached this, I hadn't drawn a picture, and Caroline was saying she wasn't following me. But everybody get it out there. Everybody get it. Okay, you ready for the answer? Well, first, let's let one of our illustrious guests. What do you think? Just a ballpark, a swag estimate of somebody's wild-ass guess. What do you think? What do you think? Don't worry if you're wrong. Everybody's wrong. Nobody gets this right, so you're in good company.
It's probably a lot more feet than you would think. That's my input on that.
It's a trick question.
It's a trick question, so, I mean, I'll give you a hint. It's not going to be a mile. It doesn't bow up a mile in the middle, no. But, okay, here we go.
Well, I've done the calcs before,
Oh,
but
you
I've played with this before, but I've forgotten
Really?
what the number is.
I wonder. They must have done that as an engineering problem in curriculum or something.
I got curious once upon a time, and I played
cool.
this out.
All right. Well, the answer is about 50 feet. It bows up almost 47 and something, in the middle. Because that 1 extra foot in there.
That was what I was going to say. 50.
Oh, well, you should have said it. You should have said
didn't
it
give
too
me a
late.
chance.
I did. Is that really what you thought?
No.
No, okay.
I was still trying
That's
to
his
figure it out.
South African humor there.
How many
Hey, we have
kilometers is
how many kilometers is it?
50 feet divided by
Oh,
3.
that's a very small fraction. A mile is about 1.6 kilometers, so a kilometer is just over half a mile, about 0.6 miles. We have a caller. I don't know if our guy who does the radio station in Ohio we were actually going to take our very first caller. I saw the phone light blinking, but I guess if Jason doesn't appear here in the next couple seconds, we won't take that caller. But now I got a couple other riddles for you. Oh, hey, Jason's out there. He's saying something to us. But meanwhile, I got a really short one for you. The world's shortest joke, okay? And I'm going to explain it next week, okay, in case you don't get it this week. But I want to see how many of you light up with laughter when I say this world's shortest joke. Here it is, okay? Ready? Ignore that man behind the curtain there. Here we go. A termite walks into a bar and says, "Is the bartender here?" And that's the joke. Anybody get it? Raise your hand if you got it. Did you get it?
No.
He didn't get it, but he's still laughing. He's laughing at it. Okay, a termite walks into a bar and says, "Is the bartender here?" I have to confess, it took me 7 months to get that joke. But usually about half of the people get it right away. Anybody get it? All right, well, you have a week. Next week, stay tuned for the suspenseful conclusion. And here's another one for you. This might take you a while. I actually got this from a delightful book by Alan Watts. Some of you sort of trippy, cosmic folks out there might know Alan Watts. He wrote a book called The Wisdom of Insecurity, which itself is a very intriguing title. It's kind of like, hey, don't worry about having everything nailed down all the time in your life. Be able to kind of roll with it, go with the flow. The Wisdom of Insecurity. Well, anyway, in that book, he gave a little anagram. You know what an anagram is?
Mm-hmm.
It's, a scrambled word. Okay, Kate, I see you surfing your cell phone, but you need to pay attention now. You ready for this anagram? See, that's the teacher in me. No cell phone during lecture. Okay, here we go. POCATELDIMC. Write that down. Just write that down for again next week. POCATELDIMC. That is a very common word that everybody knows, and it's scrambled. Now, if you get it, don't tell us. Don't shout it out here, okay? Don't shout it out. You can email it to us, though. Email it to us if you get it. Again, some people get that almost right away. Most people takes a little while, but that'll keep you busy for the better part of a week. And hey, we have some astronomical announcements. We just passed the solstice. You know, the sun is still, for all practical purposes, at its highest in the sense of us here in the north, lowest for where Claude is going back to in South Africa. Arc of the year, it's winter down there, peak winter, beginning of winter. So, but contrary to popular belief, the earliest sunrise comes about a week before the solstice, and the latest sunset comes a week after the solstice. So, hey, you still have 3-4 more days to enjoy later and later sunsets and twilights. And in our part of the world here at latitude 37 degrees north, it actually stays light until almost 10 p.m. Now, you go up to Washington State, they say, oh, that's nothing. I mean, up there, you know, it's light till almost 11, or Canada even farther. And, of course, at the North Pole, the sun is going all the way around the sky, up 24 hours, 23.5 degrees above the horizon all day long. Hey, I think our music's coming in, so keep an eye on the sky, folks. Thanks to everybody, Claude Smith, Ron Swenson, Cade, Tommy, Caroline, and have a great week, and let's all go out and save the world. Bye-bye.
KSCO, Santa Cruz.
CBS News, I'm Pam Coulter. The fate of the Senate GOP health care bill is really up to a handful of Republicans. Reporter Wendy Gillette says a vote is expected this week.
In this form, I will not support it.
Nevada's Dean Heller is one of 5 Republicans in the Senate